Hey Glam fam, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Whether you're a new subscriber or an old subscriber, welcome back to my channel. So for this look, we are going to start off with trimming the brows as usual. So I was just like trimming off the excess hair from her brows and from her face. The reason why you do this is to remove, for a trim hair from the face, is to remove any excess hair that may want to clog your makeup. So if you know that your client has hairs all over her face, please do well to clean it. My client was quite uncomfortable with this, so but then I still had to, do it. And then I went in with the Dr. Rachel micellar water. I used this to cleanse her face all round, every part of the face, remove every dirt whatsoever that was on her skin, maybe from sweating, from dust and all, because I needed to have my canvas clean. I needed her face to be clean for work. So I did that, and then went in with the Soap Pro hydrating mist. This is the Hydra mist, and I just sprayed this all over her face, and then I dabbed that with my beauty blender to make it go in. Next, I went in with the Omarico Video Moisturizer serum. Sorry, so this is a serum, and I used this generously over the skin and blended it. And I forgot to record my moisturizing process, so please, I'm so sorry. But after this step, I used a moisturizer after this was dry, and then massaged it into her skin very well. Then I went in with my Omaro Code hydrating primer, because my client has combination skin, so I needed to use both a hydrating primer and a mattifying primer for this look. So I did the hydrating primer first. I applied it all over her face apart from her under eyes, as you can see. So I blended this thoroughly into her skin. Afterwards, I used a fan to dry it down before I went in with my mattifying primer. And the mattifying primer I used is from Rimmel Cosmetics, and this is a very good mattifying primer. So I used this all over her face, everywhere, her T-zone, forehead area, apart from her under eye. Please don't apply primer whatsoever under the eyes, okay? Then after that, I allowed it to dry, and then I went in with the sweat block. I got this sweat block from Adventure Cosmetics, and I used this with a cotton pad and just dabbed it all over her T-zone area. Then I went in with the Mesmetic Silhouette spray. This is a mattifying spray, and I allowed that to sit in. I used my fan to get it to dry down, then still dabbed it with my beauty blender. For foundations, I used the V-Beauty foundations in Butterscotch and V-Java for her exact skin tone and undertone. So I mixed the two colors. I made it slightly darker because I knew that I was going to go heavy with my highlighting, and I didn't want her face to be too bright, because usually I would use only butterscotch for her skin, but I decided to darken it a bit because I didn't want her neck to be brighter than her face and her body after the whole makeup is done. So if you notice, the foundation is a bit dark on her skin, but then it's not a problem because I'm going to introduce like highlighters to brighten it up and make everything blend in properly. I used a very dense stipple brush, foundation brush, to do the blending process of this foundation. So this brush makes it very easy to blend seamlessly without any harsh lines, and everything just blends properly. So you need to add this to your kit. Any very dense brush is very good to blend your foundation out. For blush, I'm using this my lip palette from Beecham Ageless Cosmetics, and this is a very pigmented lipstick palette, so I use it for blush. And I just took out the shade that I needed and I put it all over her cheekbones and blended it into her skin, and then slightly on her nose and her forehead area. They're the places that I blended the blush. This is going to help to give you a defined and warm look, so you cannot skip the blush process when you order. So many people say, oh, they don't like blush, but no, you cannot skip the blush process, please. So always ensure to use your blush, because it helps give your face that facelift and structure that you're looking for. So for concealer, I'll be using this Avo Cosmetic concealers, and I'm going to mix the two shades to get the exact shade that I need for her. I like my concealers bright, so but I'll start off with the darker shade first on her skin and put it directly under the eyes to create the V shape. Just a little bit on the inner corner of the eyes, then at the outer corner of the eyes. I'll repeat the same process: the forehead area, the bridge of the nose, under her chin, and her cupid bow area. So you're going to apply this everywhere there, and then you start to blend gently. So I usually start off with blending her chin, then I move into blending the cupid, and then before I blend the forehead area. Now when I'm blending the forehead area, I'm not spreading it all over the face because I'm still contouring the outer corner of the forehead. So I'm just blending that inner corner of the forehead, that small space. That's where I'm going to blend the concealer, and then I'll blend it outward so that I don't have a harsh line. And then I blend the bridge of the nose. This is giving the under eye time to set, you get, so that it has more full coverage. So I do every other part of the face or of the concealer first before I go in with a blending the under eyes. This helps to give it time for it to set and then have more fuller coverage. How your makeup turns out depends on your blending technique, you get. So that's the trick to how flawless your makeup can be. It depends on how well you blend. So there are certain places that need you to go heavy handed, like your foundation. You actually blend it to sink in. But for concealers, please, your hand has to be light. You're not supposed to press in the product too much because you're going to lose it. You're supposed to be highlighting, so you're not taking away the product. You want to see the product, but you want it to be blended seamlessly, whereby you can't see where it starts and where it stops. Do you understand? I don't know if that makes sense. So you need to blend carefully, gently, just keep blending, and then everything will just come out really nicely. So after that, I went in with a brighter concealer just to pop the under eye more. This was what I was talking about when I said I wanted the foundation to go darker, because all the highlighters that are going to come in will make the face to look really bright at the end of the day. So imagine doing this on a very bright face already. The face is going to look too white. Do you understand? For contour, I'll be using a dark foundation, like 2 shades darker than her skin tone, to just contour the bridge of her nose, starting from the eyebrow and dragging it down. That's the place that you're going to contour. So you start from the eyebrow and drag it down to bridge of the nose, and then you do the same thing on the other side, and then you blend it properly. That line is not supposed to show that you contoured. So I'm going to use my beauty blender and blend this line into the highlighted concealer. As you see where the concealer is, I'm going to blend that in to it to give it a seamless finish. So there's no harsh line, there's no demarcation anywhere. I use the beauty blender to soften everything up and blend properly. For my powder, I'll be using this La Vida palette in that shade that I pointed out to set this concealer, and everything that I have done, I'm going to set it. So it's always good to use a pressed powder to set before you introduce a setting powder. So don't go directly with your setting powder, because if you don't do this, setting powders are harsh usually, and they are prone to crease up and give this ashy feeling, ashy look. So with this now, you're able to curb out that ashy look. So you have to use a pressed powder first in the exact skin tone of the client to first set the place before you introduce your setting powder. For contour, still using this same powder palette, I'm going to take that dark shade and contour her cheekbone area, her forehead area, the bridge of her nose, everywhere that needs contour basically. That's where I'm going to contour with that dark shade of powder. Contouring helps to give you that structured, snatched, defined look that you're looking for. So if you're trying to give the illusion that your face is snatched, you have high cheekbones and all, you need to contour your face. If you're trying to give the illusion that you have a pointed nose, you need to contour your nose. So basically, contouring gives the illusion of whatever. You use it to recreate whatever it is that you want to have in your on your face. So you can do that with contouring. So after all the dry products, I'm going to set the face with a setting spray from Cosmetics. It's a mattifying setting spray just to lock everything in before I go in with my setting powder. The setting powder I'll be using is from N Cosmetics, and this setting powder is good to set all the under eyes. So I'm just using it to basically bake her face, give her face that structure and further highlighting you get. So I'm going to apply this all over everywhere that I highlighted, under her eyes, the bridge of her nose, her forehead area, and then I'm going to use it to sharpen my contour line also under her cheekbone. So from there, I'll be using this my cheek brow tamer to just set my client's brows in place. It's ready for drawing. So I'm just going to use this to set everything. This is very important to avoid having the hairs moving around. So this keeps your brows, put throughout the whole day. So it's very important to use. If you don't have this, you can use edge control, or it's also good to also use like brow tamers that are produced specifically for makeup. But if you don't have access to it, this just use your edge control. It does the same thing. Start is done. I'll allow this to set and then go ahead to do my eyeshadow. So for my eyeshadow, I'll be using this eyeshadow primer from Beecham Ageless Cosmetics. This is a very good eyeshadow primer, and I'll just apply this all over the eyelid, and then I blend it up onto the crease. And you have to blend this properly so there's no harsh line, because if you don't blend this well, once you introduce your dry product, that's your eyeshadow on it, you won't be able to blend it, and then your eyeshadow will be looking messy. So you have to blend this cream first very well before you go into any other step, which is applying the main eyeshadow. So I'm going to use a fluffy brush to blend outwards, just the edge where it stops. I'm just going to, soften that line and blend it properly. And then I'll repeat the same step, everything that I've done on this other side of the eye, and blend thoroughly to make sure that I do not have any harsh line whatsoever that is going to affect my eye work, my eyeshadow look. So everything, and then make sure that your client does not open their eyes during this process. Tell them to keep their eyes closed no matter what. They should not open their eyes, because the moment they open their eyes, they are going to ruin what you've just blended and you're going to have a crease. Check it. So ask them to always keep their eyes closed until you finish your eyeshadow process. So for my eyeshadow, I'll be using this V Beauty palette. It's a newly launched palette, so I'll be using it. I like the neutral shades in it. I'm going to be using it to do her eye work today. So I'm going to be using this warm brown, a bit warm orange, I don't know, a bit burnt orange on her crease. I'm going to use that as my transition shade. So I'm just going to be blending that from the outer corner of the eyes to the inner corner of the eyes, dragging it in and blending it properly to give that seamless and very well laid out warm look. You get. So yeah, after that, I'm going to go in with the dark brown on that same palette. I'll just take out the dark brown shade on the palette and I'll put it at the outer corner of the eyes, not on the transition shade, but just at the outer corner of the eyes, and then just move my hand and keep blending and just blend it till it's nice and it's seamless. I'll now take the excess from the brush and then drag it into the inner corners of the eyes to give that smoky effect, and then blend it into the transition shade. You get, just gently, not too much, because I don't want to take away the transition shade color. So I'm just blending lightly whatever is left from the brush, dragging it down from the outer corner of the eyes to the inner corners of the eyes. This is just to give that smoky effect. When I'm done, I'm going to go in with the warm brown shade that I used for the transition shade again to just, blend everything together and, take away every harsh line whatsoever. I just take away every harsh line, blend that in properly with that brown shade. I'm going to go in with this warm burnt orange shade on my lid just to create my base for my pigments, because I'm going to be using pigments for this look. So I'm going to apply that generously all over my lid, you know, everywhere that I need to apply on my lid. I'm going to put that there. You know, that just creates a very soft base for your pigments, because the pigments cannot stay directly on the eyeshadow primer. But before then I'm going to use a glue to apply the pigment, so the glue stays on this base that I have just done. It's not supposed to go directly on the eyeshadow primer, so please take note. The glue stays on the base that you just did, so you have to make a base. You can decide to do the smoky throughout for your base, but I like to use this shade because the shade of pigment I'm going to use is around this color, so that's what I like to do. Then I'll repeat the process on this other side of the eye as well before my pigment comes. So I'm going to be using this pigment from Lustre Cosmetics, and I like the shade. It's called Pastel. I'm going to be applying this gently all over the lid, all over where I put the glue, and you can see how the glue is helping to like hold the pigments together and they are not scattering everywhere, and then it's helping it to pop also. So I'm going to repeat the process on both sides of the eyes, and that's what we have. For my eyeliner, I'll be using this gel liner from Beyond Beauty Cosmetics to line. So I'm going to start off by lining her eyelids, and I'm going to line this as close to her lash line as possible because you don't want this eyeliner to be too big. The moment this eyeliner is too fat or too thick, it spoils the whole look. Like it will just take up all the space of your eyeshadow and it doesn't look cute at all. It doesn't look beautiful. So you have to keep it as close to your lash line as possible. Please don't take it above your lash line, just very close to your lash line. And I'm just trying to carefully line the inner corners of her eyes. My client has a very sensitive eyes and gets really teary very fast, so I was really careful so I don't smudge, number one. Number two, so I don't make her start crying, and then we'll now start going over drying her face and all. I didn't want all of that. I mean, I was running behind time already, so I needed to be really careful. So I did that carefully, and then I'm using this very tiny brush. It's a disposable brush. So it's an eyeliner brush you can get from any makeup store. It's disposable, you can buy. I have a pack of them. So when you use this gives you precision to be able to get that very thin line. So as you can see, she's opening her eyes. You can see that her eyes are lined. You can see that her eyes, the eyeshadow is, you've not covered the eyeshadow, we can still see the eyeshadow and we are still seeing the liner, and it's beautiful. So please try to keep your liner as thin as possible. I went ahead to do a very soft winged liner for her, nothing too dramatic, just something very soft that's perfect for her eye shape and the look that we are going for in general. I realized I didn't record when I was lining her waterline, but I still took some more eyeliner to extend the lining just a little bit on her lower lid because I wanted to make a smoky eye. So I just extended it a bit, and then I'm going to use a brush with an eyeshadow to just blend that in to give that smoky effect under the eyes. So you can skip this step if you do not want to do the smoky eye, but if you do want to do a smoky eye underneath the lid, you can do this. Okay, so it's not compulsory, it's optional, it depends on your vibe. But this was the vibe that I was going for, this was the look that I was creating, so that's why I did this. Okay, blending with the brush, I was blending it to make sure that there are no harsh lines and there are no demarcations. I used the dark eyeshadow that I used to do her eyeshadow, her main eyeshadow. I used it to blend under the eyes too, and then I repeated the process on this other side of the eye. Then to sharpen my liner and to give that very lifted look, I used my concealer and my concealer brush to just clean it out properly, giving it an angled shape. So I just cleaned it upwards. For my mascara, I'll be using this Avor Volume Lens Super Perfect Mascara. I'm going to be using this and apply it on her lash. I'm going with my finishing powder to, just blend out the excess setting powder that we have. I'll just blend it out carefully. I'm not sweeping, I'm literally just dapping it in without actually just sweeping off the product. So I'm dapping it in with my finishing powder as well. So I'm just going to blend all over her face. For lashes, I just picked a lash style that suits her eyes from my Chill Lashes collections, and then I used it. For blush, I'll be using this CPD Cosmetic blush palette. This is a very good blush palette. I like the pigments in it. I like how pigmented it is. And then I'm just going to be using this to, apply on the apples of her cheek, her forehead area, and her nose. For my finishing spray, I'll be using this Super Hydra Mist. This is a finishing spray, helps to melt the makeup in. So I want everything to get melted in and feel like skin. So I'm going to use that. Then I'll move on to my mattifying spray and my setting spray from MS Cosmetics and Avor, and I'm going to be using both of them. For my lips, I'm going back in with this Becharm Ageless palette. I'm going to use this throughout for her lips. I'm going to start off with this dark brown to outline her cupid bone and the rest of her lips, to just give it that contour. I'll blend this out really well before I bring in the nude shade. So I'm going to blend this out to avoid any harsh lines. You want everything to blend in seamlessly. Then I went in with a pink shade from the palette, like a peachy pink sort of, and then I just popped that in the center and then kept blending and blending until I got my desired result. I went in to apply my lip gloss because I wanted it to be glossy. So after I got my desired result, I added my lip gloss and blended everything nicely, and it was so beautiful. For my dewy balm, I'll be using this glazed from Cosmetics, and I'll just be using my beauty sponge and applying this just on the forehead area. I'm not going to use this all over her face because I want to have a matte look on her face, so I just want only her forehead to glow. So I'm going to use this just on her forehead because I want the rest of the face to be matte. For glow, I'm going to use this fairy dust stuff from Pro Cosmetics. So I'm just going to use this to apply on her nose, the bridge of her nose, you know, and then I'll apply it on the apples of her cheek as well. I don't want to use the caked bronzers. That was not the look I was trying to create, so I just want this fairy dust effect. I went in again with my mascara just to, you know, pop her bottom lashes. You know, I just did that under her eyes for her bottom lashes. She has very sensitive eyes, and this was a real struggle, but we're able to pull through without, you know, soiling our makeup. And yeah, that's it. And this is a finished look. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you liked it. I hope you learned a thing or two. Thank you so much for staying through this time. And then we went on to tie her gele, and she looked absolutely stunning. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.